Hi there, my name is Steve Wells.
And I'm Jeffrey Feldberg. Welcome to the first episode of the Sell My Business podcast. You know, Steve, we have so much to share with our listeners in the community. And firstly, thank you so much for dropping in and being part of our journey. You know, we could tell you about our 9-figure exit and the growth strategies that we used along the way that got us there. But every story has a beginning. And Steve, why don't we go right back to the start and share how we got our humble beginnings.
Sure. And maybe before we do that, this podcast finds us in a very interesting time. We didn't know when we were planning to begin this podcast that this thing called the coronavirus would pop up. And so as we launch this inaugural episode, you may find and hear some noises in the background because we're all quarantined. I'm in my home office and I got 6 people living in my home, including 2 little grandkids that are running around like crazy. But, you know, that's what life brings us. And I actually think it's a great way to start because, Jeffrey, when we started our business, it wasn't the coronavirus, but it wasn't a great time either.
Yeah, Steve, I remember that. We had a bit of a jump start with when we first got going in 95, but we were on a mission to put ourselves out of business with the next best idea. So you can imagine as a business owner, you haven't been profitable. You finally turn the corner. You start seeing some success. You start having some money in the bank that you can call your own. And what do we decide to do? We decide to put that all up for grabs, put it all on the line and start. We had an e-learning company at the time called Embanet, and we started Embanet 2. And Steve, why don't you tell everyone when we started Embanet 2? It was very similar to what's going on now.
Well, it was 1999 and the economy was in a bit of a recession and starting. So it wasn't a good time to begin a business. But you know, it was a great time because we knew that this kind of online learning needed to get started. And it seems crazy now. I mean, people kind of take it for granted, but back then it was a very radical idea. But you know, the good thing about starting in a difficult time, so I'm speaking to maybe companies that are trying to start right now, is that when you do that, you're very efficient. You can't waste money, obviously, and you can't waste your time. So you begin to be disciplined in what you're going to do, and you react quickly. And that discipline, Jeffrey, I think really followed us throughout our business life and until we sold the business.
Steve, you're absolutely right. You know, because we started in a challenging time, and like most business owners, we just didn't have what we didn't have. We weren't capitalized. I mean, we ran the company. We started the company as a cockroach startup and continued running like a cockroach startup all the way through. And you know, 2 terms that come to mind as I think about today, where we are in this pandemic from the coronavirus, but also, you know, back in 99, 2000 of what some people call the dot bomb era when the markets just came tumbling down. The 2 terms that for me that come to mind are that you want to learn how to pivot and profit, and also that resourcefulness trumps resources. I mean, even if we wanted to, we didn't have the money in the bank to spend. So we had to become resourceful. And that just became a part of our company culture. Steve, I don't know, would you agree with me when I say that if we started with a bank full of money, we probably would not have attained the growth levels and the success that we
I
got
know
to?
I know for certain we wouldn't have, and we may not have time on this podcast because you and I have both been in a situation where we had plenty of money and it resulted in not a good ending. So had we had all the resources that we wanted, we wouldn't have been forced to be creative and come up with solutions that ended up creating huge value for our business. And the culture, I mean, ultimately, we'll get into this. We were able to create a company that sold for nine figures. And what at the time we started, it's 7 years after that we were selling. But during that process, we had no idea that it would actually get that large. But looking back, we realized how we built that was really that foundation that we're able to instill in the 200 people that worked for us, and our marketing model and our service model, all were really influenced by those beginning, really about a year that we started.
Absolutely. And so to our listeners, as you begin this journey with us, I want you to think about something. Whether you want to keep your business forever or you want to sell it tomorrow, the little known tips and strategies that we're going to share with you, they work. They work in the pandemic times, they work in the boom times, they just work all the time. And more importantly, I mean, nothing frustrates me more than when I see people charging good money for something that they've never done themselves. So everything that we share with you, we've been in the trenches, we are in the trenches. It's from business owners to business owners. And Steve, why don't we go back to the beginning now and start with, well, how do we get here? Why do we start Deep Wealth? Why do we start this podcast? What is this all about? And really, who are we to even be in a position to share what we're going to share?
Right. Well, this podcast, and this is the first one, so you're going to hear us talk only on this one. But in the future podcasts, you're going to hear people that have exited or are going through that process or are interested in buying companies, other people and other experts. And we thought that this podcast would be helpful because we were asked after our very successful exit to kind of share our information. Like, how did you do it? And through that process, we've talked to just literally hundreds of people. And through that process, we thought, well, this podcast would be a good way to begin to give a glimpse into some of the methods and the reasons and the strategies for executing a very successful strategy of exiting your company. And we're going to get to, why Deep Wealth, Jeffrey, and you can maybe talk a little about that. But I think it's important too, not to beat a dead horse, but this difficult time we're in, it may not be the best time to sell for most people. And it's like when we started, it's not the best time to start a company maybe, but this is the perfect time to build. And so when Jeffrey mentioned, to pivot and change, this is now an opportunity, if you have a business, to look and see where it's weak, to understand its weaknesses. In this economy, obviously there's a lot of service sectors like travel and food sectors like restaurants that are really having a tough time. And they're rethinking their whole business model. And I think that can happen with anyone. So it's a good time to do that. And we're going to help businesses kind of through that process. But Jeffrey, maybe you can tell a little bit about, why we started Deep Wealth and what it does.
I'm going to take our listeners back to the beginning. The honest truth is, we started the company, we had no money, no experience, and no team. It was an idea for the e-learning company. And we had no business being in business, and the results showed. It was just pure grit and passion that kept us in the game long enough to be able to experience success. And with success, we came on the radar of different people out there. One of the people that approached us at the time was a sophisticated, experienced, and smart buyer. And this buyer came to us and gave us a seven-figure offer that was based on 3 times EBITDA. And the buyer knew that we didn't know what we didn't know. That was a lot of money for us. When we said no to the buyer was not only shocked, so were the people around us, our friends and our family. I mean, Steve, they knew that we were crazy, but that just proved that we were certifiable when we said no. When we said no to the buyer, to the 7-figure offer, we were saying yes to mastering the art and science of selling a company. And so for the next 2 years, we just dedicated ourselves. And Steve, as you mentioned, we spoke to anyone and everyone who would speak to us, people that had won big in growing a company and selling it, people who had lost big on selling a company. And how do you get success? Success leaves clues. You find other people that achieve success, and you mirror what they're doing. You do less of what doesn't work, and you do more of what does work.
And we're not financial experts, really far from it. So it's not like we came in with this idea with a lot of financial training. Now, I wouldn't call ourselves financial experts, but we're experts on this process because we've successfully done it and we've learned. But we had to educate ourselves a great deal. So, and that's what we did for those 2 years. So, and then what happened?
For all of you out there who are marketers and strong in the sales area but not great in the numbers area, I got great news for you. That's us. So to your point, Steve, we didn't have some of that financial background that you may be thinking that you need. But when you surround yourself with the right people, and we'll talk about that, anything is possible. So when we said yes to the next offer, which was 2 years later, it was saying yes to a figure a nine-figure offer that was based on 13 times EBITDA. But here's a strange thing, and here's the question I'm going to put out there. How did we increase our company value 10x when it was the same company with the same people and the same service? What changed? Steve, you want to tackle that?
Well, there are a lot of things changed. It was mainly us. The company didn't change. Our product didn't change. What changed was how we looked at the company and some of the things that we did and how we structured and how we positioned the company. And when it was all said and done, the value of the company was always there. What's so interesting when you look at people and they try to create valuations, and we've talked to people who want to sell their company and they go, well, I'm going to get this valuation from this person. I mean, what does that really mean? I know there's formulas and there's industry standards, but if we, and we'll talk a little bit about this, if someone had come and valued our company and they did, they would have put it at the 3 times EBITDA, but it ended up selling for 13 times. So their value was wrong. And these are experts. So one of the principles is use experts, and you build a team, and you're going to build a very important team. We call it an exit team, but you cannot trust what someone says, not that they're necessarily malicious, but they're just misinformed.
And misinformed, they are. I mean, what was amazing, at least for me, the old saying, you're never a prophet in your hometown. I think for a lot of people, and in the earlier years, I put myself in this belief, is you're never a prophet in your own mind, or I was never a prophet in my own mind. I didn't appreciate what it was that we had achieved and did. And so after we had our nine-figure exit and increased our value 10x, entrepreneurs and business owners would approach us from time to time. Hey, how did you do it? Can you give me some tip? What can I do? And we would do that. But it was around, I'm going to say a year and a half, 2 years ago now, that close friends of ours, also business owners, approached us and said, guys, we want to do what you did. We've grown the company. It's time for us to move on. Can you tell us exactly what you did? Can you give us your playbook of what you use, the strategies that you use to sell your company? And, we said to them, sure, we'll give it to you, but it's not going to make a lot of sense to you because, we wrote it in a way that was just specific to us and we understood it. And it was really more for us than for everyone else. So I'll tell you what, let us look to the outside. Let us find you a seminar, a book, a conference, a person who can give you the best practices and teach you that. And so we looked and we looked and we looked some more. And what we found was astonishing. What we found were people charging a lot of money to share these so-called secrets, but they were making their money not because they were in the trenches and they did this themselves. They were making the money from selling people on something that they never had done in the first place. And the other thing that we learned, I had naively thought, and I don't know about you, Steve, but I was just naive. I thought that the first buyer who came to us with that 3 times EBITDA offer, he knew the company was worth more than 3 times, but he used the old tactic of, let me throw some money in front of these entrepreneurs, these business owners, and let the money just lead the way that they'll say yes to me when they otherwise shouldn't be saying yes. I thought we were the exception, not the rule, that this wolf in sheep's clothing gave us this offer. And I thought that most buyers didn't do that. And, here we are as entrepreneurs, we take the risk, sleepless nights, we make a difference in our community, we provide jobs, we're solving problems. And when it's time to cash in the chips and move on to the next chapter in our life, we get ripped off. And that turned out not to be the exception, but the rule. And Steve, do you remember that conversation that we had a year and a half, 2 years ago, when we discovered that that was the exception, not the rule?
Well, we had our friends coming to us, and through that process, then we would start to interview and talk with other people, and we saw them being ripped off. I mean, as you said, Jeffrey, I mean, they were taken advantage of. Because most entrepreneurs, there's a lot of reasons why they don't succeed in the exit. First, the skill set that they use to build their company is not the same to sell a company, and so that's the get-go. Plus, for a lot of people, it's not fun. It's just not enjoyable. And so when we tried to send friends and colleagues, to a resource, we couldn't find one because it just didn't exist. I mean, like you said, people were just making money trying to sell programs on something that they'd never done themselves. So, we said, we've got to do something about this. So we created a company to do this very thing, not because we needed to do this, but we really wanted to do it. And the word deep wealth originated because we saw this deep wealth within entrepreneurs' companies that was just being wasted. And we wanted them to be able to extract that deep wealth for themselves and for their families and for their community. And so it was really, in our case, an emotional motivation that led us to create it.
Absolutely. I know, Steve, I know I speak for you when I say that for us, the days of entrepreneurs getting ripped off, they end, and they end right now, because we've made it our mission to level the playing field, to give entrepreneurs, to give business owners the tools that they need to succeed and to claim the value, to find the deep wealth that they never knew they had. I mean, I don't know about you, Steve, but nothing has me cringe more than when I speak to a fellow entrepreneur and I hear this story time and time again. You're not going to believe it, Jeffrey. I got this unsolicited offer from this buyer. It was a lot of money on the table. And man, did I knock it out of the park. And not only did I knock it out of the park, but look at all the time that I saved. I mean, he came to me. I didn't have to pay a commission to a broker or an investment banker. I saved money there. I saved all the time. And look at all the zeros that I have in my bank account. And, and while I'm happy for that person, on the outside, on the inside, I'm crying because I can't even begin to imagine the millions or the tens of millions, depending on the company size, that was left on the table, the money that was literally stolen from the business owner's pocket and put directly into the buyer's pocket from well-known tactics and strategies that buyers will use to rip business owners off when buying businesses. And that has just got to stop. So that is our creed. That is our anthem. That's what deep wealth is all about, is to turn the tables, level the playing field, and give business owners the advantage in the process of letting them find the next chapter in a way that they can continue to help people, but to prosper and succeed.
And the great thing about these principles, not only ultimately, if your vision is to sell your company, it will increase a higher value. But these very same things are going to build a better company. Even everyone knows we're in a difficult time right now. So it's probably for most companies not a great time to sell. But you didn't know that, a few months ago before this coronavirus. And the same token, you don't know when this great opportunity is going to be. It could be market timing. It could be something that's happening in the industry. Who knows? So what you always want to do is get your company prepared. And the preparation takes a little while. So this is a great time to do that. There's structure. There could be some tax structure that you need at least a year. There could be some personnel and organizational structure. It's going to take you a year or so, product structure. But all those things and all the tips and all our playbook Every one of those tips is going to help the company be more successful, be more profitable. And at the end of the day, the company is now prepared to take advantage of opportunity if it comes, or to shift and go in a different direction, or maybe you want to give it away to your family. Whatever your choice is going to be in the future, you're going to be in such a much more powerful way by taking the time, going through, learning the principles, understanding the mechanisms that are against you that you don't even know they're there, and attacking those head on instead of letting them attack you. Doing all that stuff right now could make a huge difference 2 years from now in where your company's going to be.
Steve, you're absolutely right. And as you're sharing that, I thought it had just crossed my mind. I mean, just as any entrepreneur, the first day that you're open for business, is that success? Even the first year that you're in business, is that a success? No, it takes time. You have to figure out how it's going to work. You have to find the right people. It takes you a while to put together the right team, the right employees around you so that you can go out into the marketplace so that you can dominate and win. So why would it be any different when it comes time to sell your company if you choose to come to sell your company? There's a saying that the person who wins the negotiation is the person who cares the least. And there's a lot of truth to that. When you're prepared, when you master and implement the strategies, the growth strategies that we'll share with you in what we call the deep wealth experience that we've put together, when you put those strategies in place and you have a thriving and profitable company, when you have the mindset that you can pandemic proof your business, that you know how to pivot and profit, you now have choices, and choices are powerful. Do you keep on running a company that continues to be thriving and profitable? That doesn't sound so bad to me. Or when the opportunity comes that you have the ability to take advantage of that opportunity and sell your company, that doesn't sound so bad to me either. The point is that you have choice, and choice is king in good times, in challenging times, in everything else in between. It doesn't make a difference. Choice is king, and having that can make all the difference.
And that's obviously one of the purposes of the podcast, is to begin to allow people to learn some of these principles and to hear examples from other people. But what we have done in Deep Wealth is create a more formalized structure. And since we were in the online learning industry and background, we've spent a lot of time to create what we call learning experiences, where it helps the business owner understand these principles and to do it within the protection of a small group, and doing it in a very, I say, pretty efficient timeline and in a way that doesn't disrupt the business. So when we set out to think about how do we communicate these principles, we knew the business owners, time is critical. I mean, time is no, I've never met an entrepreneur, any business owner that said, "Oh, I'm just bored. I don't have anything to do." So we know time is critical, and we know the attention is going to be distracted because you're running a business. So how can we help people get this information in a way that they can use it, they can begin to apply it very quickly? And so, that was a forefront of our mind when we put together the Deep Wealth learning experience.
One of the things that I'll take one small tidbit out of the learning experience that we put together, or the online experience that we put together. And if you get nothing out of this podcast episode, but this one thing, this will take you forward with a growth strategy. And sometimes common sense isn't common sense. For all of you business owners out there, I have a very simple question. Does your business run without you? It's so simple. I'm going to ask it again. And I don't want to hear excuses. It's either yes or no. Does your business run without you? And I pick this one specifically because I know this is one of the mistakes that we made. And yes, we had a 9-figure exit, but it could have been even more. For most businesses, and I'll put ourselves in this category, really, to the business, we were the sun, the moon, the stars. Everything revolved around us. And in the scheme of things, if you want to grow your company, if you want to be a market disruptor, if you want to be able to pivot and profit during challenging times, the truth is your business has to run without you. You can't be in the day to day. You have to be working on the business, not in the business. And that's one of the things in the experience that we talk about. I mean, in the experience, we also put you into a mastermind group where you can share what you're doing with other business owners who aren't in competition with you to see what works, what doesn't work, and how you can put yourself in a business that doesn't run, runs without you. And Steve, as we look to these challenging times that we're in right now, and we talk about the power of a business running, without the owner, I can imagine how much more we could have done had we followed that and put that principle in place from day one.
Oh, yeah. Well, as you said, we had a very successful exit, but we didn't do everything right by any means. And so we use those examples and those lessons to share to maybe make the playbook 2.0 a lot better than the playbook that we used, even though it was a great playbook for us. And we actually, over the years, have revised the playbook a bit just through conversations of people who had a little bit different experiences and different kind of companies. And so we've really picked up some really good tips and examples from other people in other industries. And, we have the benefit of history. We've gone back and had discussions with people that were negotiating with us and on our behalf and even against us, and kind of dissected the process. And that was very interesting, going back and getting some real honest conversations about, how some of the things we did that really benefited us and some of the things that we did that, we maybe left some money on the table. So that process is very good. And, we've developed the deep wealth experience again in a way that we would never have thought would have been so important in this time of this coronavirus. I mean, everyone's on Zoom and everyone's doing these kind of live teleconferencing, and this will be probably go down in the dictionary at some point. Everyone's zoomed out. This synchronous communication is really overwhelming people. Okay? People are trying to work from their homes and they can't get into the offices. Well, we created the learning experience in something that's called asynchronous communication, meaning it's utilizing video and it's utilizing conversation. But what it means is that these meetings don't take place in a live time or place. So for the business owner, they can participate with their mastermind group in a structure during the week. It's structured, it's not free for all, but they don't have to be there at 7 a.m. Eastern time, or they don't have to be in a physical place. Now, we can have all those types of things, but we can't expect a business owner to be as engaged all at the same time, at the same moment, and with us personally helping them. So, we knew that was a powerful tool coming from the education background, but given the environment we're in today, we didn't realize, how it's almost an essential tool now.
Steve, you're absolutely right. I know when we were speaking to different business owners and they said, guys, I really want to learn how I can grow my business the way you guys grew your business. And, back in the Embanet days in our e-learning company, we were just growing so quickly. I mean, internally we would joke, whereas, 1 year in our e-learning company, it was like a dog year that would be worth 7 years in every other company, because we were just growing by leaps and bounds with these resourceful strategies that we had put in place. But we've heard from business owners who say, look, I don't have the time, and I don't even know if I want to spend the money on something like this. Why should I do it? Why should I care? Why should it even be a concern? And, life is all about choices. And the choices that we make today, they shape our destiny for tomorrow. And where I think a lot of business owners get off track is, well, if this business doesn't work out, or if I sell this business today, I'll start another business tomorrow and it'll be bigger and better and even more successful. And the truth is that that's probably not going to be the case. One very quick story is, I mentioned we started our e-learning company with no money experience or team, and we had a 9-figure exit. Well, Steve alluded to this earlier. After the 9-figure exit, we started a new business in healthcare. Now, this time, we did have the money and the experience, and we even had the same team. And Steve, remember how we shot up to 7 figures so quickly in that healthcare company? Why don't you share with everyone what those 7 figures were?
Well, the problem with the 7 figures is that they weren't in black font type; they were in red. That was a negative 7 figures that we lost. And the reason really was that we had too much money, but we didn't have enough attention and time. So money, if it was so simple that money just solved all the problems, and I think business would be pretty easy. It'd just be you throw a bunch of money at something, and out comes the other end, a lot more money. But life doesn't work that way. And so I always find that it was discouraging then, but I find it encouraging particularly when you talk to young people, entrepreneurs, like people I'm mentoring, and they always go, if I just had an investor here, or will you put money into here? And I go, money is your least problem that you have. I mean, if you have the intelligence, if you have the character, if you have the physical time, and you have relationships, all the money will find you, or you'll be able to use those other tools to find the money. But money without those things is just going to be a failure.
Absolutely. And, in the healthcare company, so why was it that the e-learning company on paper should have failed and the healthcare company on paper should have been a runaway success? Why was it the opposite? For me, anyways, it was lack of passion. I just didn't have the passion. It was all about the money for me to make even more money than it was with the e-learning company. So we share that story with you to get a point across that the business that you have right now, this may be the best thing that you have. Hopefully it isn't. Hopefully down the road, there'll be something even better, but the statistics say otherwise. So if this is the best chance that you have, to me, it just makes sense that you want to make the most of it. You want to put the growth strategies in place to grow the company and generate as much profits as you can, because it means you're helping people solve painful problems. You're taking their pain away. And it puts you in a position where you do have a choice. And so that's really what it's all about. And with the Deep Wealth experience, what we've done is you're surrounded by a mastermind. You have a live success coach that's there to help you at any time. I mean, the only silly question is the one that's never asked. And and you have us that's there to support you. So look, as we begin to wrap things up, and we start looking towards the future with you, we want to give you in these challenging times a sense of hope. And the sense of hope is that tomorrow is a better day, and that you will get through this. And there are strategies that will and make all the difference for you. But you got to start somewhere. And so let's start with today. Let's start with this first episode, and let's begin our journey together of helping you get from a point A to point B the smart way, and to work hard, but to also work smart.
In the coming weeks ahead, you'll hear some interviews, not us talking, with some people who are going to give you very practical tips who've been through recessions and have had various companies, and what they did and what they are doing now to thrive and redirect their company. If you're interested in more information, you can find us at deepwealth.com. That's www.deepwealth.com. And we enjoyed today and appreciate your interest and look forward to more sessions to come.